The sun was sinking low over the rugged New Mexico hills, throwing long, jagged shadows across the dusty ground. On the edge of his ranch, Cole Maddox sat on the worn steps of his porch, a coffee cup cooling in his hands. The wind whispered through the dry grass, carried with it the faint scent of rain that never seemed to fall. Life had become a rhythm of silence for Cole, mornings fixing fences, afternoons riding the range, nights alone by the fire. He hadn't shared his home with anyone in years. Folks in town called him the ghost cowboy, a man who spoke little, smiled less, and carried the kind of sadness you didn't ask about. That evening, he'd planned nothing more than to turn in early, but the land had other ideas. From the ridge to the west came the sound of a horse running hard, too hard. Cole set his cup down, grabbing the rifle leaning against the wall. He mounted his bay, gelding, and rode toward the sound, dust rising behind him like a pale trail of smoke. He found her near the creek, two men cornering a young woman against the rocks. Her long black hair was tangled, her dress torn, eyes wide with defiance. Even from a distance, Cole recognized her markings, the beadwork along her dress, the silver band around her wrist. She was no ordinary traveler. She was a daughter of the Red Hawk tribe, a princess. Cole didn't stop to think. He fired a warning shot into the air, the crack echoing off the canyon walls. The men spun around, curses flying. One drew his pistol, but Cole's next shot took the weapon clean from his hand. "Leave her," Cole said, his voice flat but deadly. The men didn't argue a second time. They mounted and rode off, disappearing into the gathering dusk. The woman's chest rose and fell quickly, her eyes locked on Cole. She didn't speak, but the fear in her gaze shifted to something else, something sharper, more guarded. "You're safe now," he said quietly, lowering his rifle. "Can you walk?" She hesitated, then gave a single nod. Her voice, when it came, was soft but sure. "I can." By the time they reached his ranch, the first stars had appeared over the plains. Cole brought her inside, offering the warmth of the hearth and a blanket. She didn't want to sit at first, her posture stiff, but exhaustion won. "What's your name?" he asked, setting a pot of coffee on the stove. She studied him for a long moment before answering. "Tyanida." "Cole," he said simply. She told him little that night, only that she'd been taken while gathering herbs near the creek. The rest, she kept locked behind dark eyes that seemed to weigh his every word. Cole didn't press her. Instead, he let the quiet do the talking, tending the fire and making sure she had food. But when he brought her a plate, her fingers brushed his, just for a second. The touch was light as air, but it lingered. She met his gaze then, and in the flickering firelight, something unspoken passed between them. In the early hours before dawn, Cole woke to the sound of hoofbeats. Stepping outside, he saw them, warriors of the Red Hawk tribe, their faces painted, their horses restless under the weight of their speed. At their head rode an older man, his bearing proud, his eyes sharp as flint. Tyanida stepped out beside Cole, her chin high. The old man dismounted and spoke in their language, his voice deep and deliberate. Cole understood little, but the message was clear from the way Tyanida's expression softened, then tightened again. Finally, the old man turned to Cole and spoke in halting English. "You saved my daughter. For this, we offer something in return." Cole shifted uncomfortably. "No need for that. She's safe, that's enough." The man shook his head. "In our ways, a life saved is a bond made. You may come to our village as a friend. And if you wish it," his gaze flicked between Cole and Tyanida, "you may take her as your wife." The words hit Cole like a hammer. He looked at Tyanida, finding her already watching him. There was no fear there, no surprise, only quiet, steady eyes waiting for his choice. He swallowed hard. I'm not sure that's... But Tyanida stepped forward, closing the space between them. "You are not like the others," she said softly. "I saw in your eyes when you came for me." She hesitated, her fingers lightly brushing his arm. "You have a lonely heart. I know the look, because I carry it too." Cole's throat tightened. He'd lived years without anyone seeing that truth, and now this woman, this stranger, spoke it as if she'd known him forever. The tribe left before noon, But Tyanida stayed. She said she needed time before returning home, and Cole didn't argue. Days passed, the two of them falling into an easy rhythm, fixing fences together, riding out to check the cattle, sharing quiet meals in the evening. She laughed rarely, but when she did, it was like sunlight breaking through clouds. Cole found himself wanting to hear it again, wanting to see her eyes light in that way. One night, they sat on the porch, the sky spilling stars above them. Tyanida spoke of her people, of the river where she learned to swim, of the songs her mother sang. Cole told her the wife he'd lost a fever years ago, of the silence that had followed. She reached for his hand, her fingers warm against his calloused skin. The heart can be lonely for so long. It forgets what warmth feels like, she whispered. He turned to her then, searching her face in the silver wash of moonlight. And what if I'm afraid to feel again? Her lips curved into the smallest smile. Then let me remind you. The kiss was slow, hesitant at first, two souls testing the edge of something neither had expected. But when her hand came to rest against his cheek, Cole let go of the years he'd carried like a weight. The next morning, he saddled his horse. If you still want to return to your people, I'll ride with you, he told her. Tyanida met his gaze for a long moment, then shook her head. My home is here now if you'll have me. Cole's answer came without thought, without fear. Always. And in that quiet moment, with the wide plain stretching out before them and the wind carrying the scent of summer rain, the ghost cowboy and the native princess found the one thing they both stopped believing in: love. The summer sun was high over the Maddox ranch, the heat rippling off the hard-packed earth. Cole stood at the corral fence, wiping sweat from his brow as he watched Tyanida work with a young mare. She moved with quiet confidence, her voice low and steady as she guided the horse in a slow circle. It had been weeks since she chose to stay, and Cole had begun to wonder how he'd ever lived without her. The house felt warmer now, the silences softer. There was laughter again, small moments that surprised them both. But peace on the frontier was fragile. The first sign of trouble came one afternoon in town. Cole had taken Tyanida with him to collect supplies. They walked side by side down Main Street, his hand brushing hers now and then, a simple gesture that felt more daring than any gunfight. A group of men loitering outside the saloon fell silent as they passed. One of them, a broad-shouldered cattle driver with a sneer carved into his face, spat in the dirt. Didn't figure you for the type to keep a squaw, Maddox, he said loud enough for half the street to hear. Cole stopped cold, his jaw tightening. He could feel Tyanida stiffen beside him. Careful what you say, Cole warned, his voice low. The man laughed, taking a step closer. Just saying, folks around here don't take kindly to mixing blood. Maybe you ought to send her back where she belongs. Before Cole could answer, Tyanida spoke, her voice calm but cutting. I belong where my heart is, and it is not with men who measure worth by ignorance. The man's smirk faltered. Cole's eyes never left his as he said, Get out of my way. They walked on, but the words lingered like a shadow. That night, as they sat by the fire, Cole reached for her hand. You know you don't have to put up with this. If you ever want. I will not leave because others cannot see, she interrupted softly. I chose you, Cole. That does not change because the world is small. The trouble didn't end there. One evening, while Cole was mending a fence line, a rider came hard from the east, one of Tyanida's cousins from the Red Hawk tribe. His face was grim. There are men hunting in the hills, he told them. They say a bounty's been placed on her. Cole felt the air leave his lungs. Why? The cousin's eyes darkened. The men who took her before, they lost face when you saved her. They've told lies to stir trouble. There's a price for her capture. Cole's voice was like steel. Then they'll have to go through me first. The next days were tense. Cole kept his rifle close, his eyes scanning the horizon. Tyanida refused to hide inside. I will not live in fear, she told him, but he could see the strain in her face when she thought he wasn't looking. It happened on the fifth night. Cole was out checking the cattle when gunshots cracked through the stillness. He spurred his horse hard, the ground flying beneath them. At the ranch, he found two men trying to drag Tyanida toward their horses. She fought like a wildcat, but one had her by the arm, the other raising a pistol. Cole didn't think. He fired. The first man went down. The second stumbled back, dropping her arm before bolting into the dark. He was off his horse in a heartbeat, pulling her into his arms. She was shaking, her breath coming in ragged bursts. "You're safe," he whispered fiercely. "You're safe now." Her hands clung to his shirt, and for the first time, tears slipped down her cheeks. "I thought I might never see you again." "You'll always see me," he said, his voice breaking. The next morning, they stood together on the porch, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Cole took her hands in his. "I can't promise the world will be kind," he said quietly, "but I can promise you'll never face it alone." Tiana's smile was soft, but her eyes were fierce. "And I can promise I will stand beside you, even when the shadows come." He kissed her then, not tentative, not questioning, but certain. The bond forged in danger, strengthened by choice, was now sealed by love. And somewhere beyond the horizon, the world was still dangerous. But for Cole Maddox and the princess who had chosen him, the future, like the morning sun, was theirs to claim.